Hi, Mrs. Stanley here. Let's talk about congruent triangles and CPCTC. That is a fun thing that you will get used to hearing. Looking at the objective, I can identify congruent parts of congruent triangles and write valid congruency statements. CPCTC is an abbreviation for those words I just read, congruent parts of congruent triangles. You will notice it is the beginning of each word. So let's look first, what are congruent triangles? Congruent triangles have the same shape and size. This means all corresponding parts, angles, and sides are congruent. So they have the same shape and size, meaning that all of the angles and all the sides are congruent to a corresponding part in another triangle. It's not an equilateral or equiangular triangle where all the parts of one triangle are equal. It means that there are corresponding parts of two triangles that are the same to each other. There is a diagram here. If you look at this second part where it says congruent statements, you can look at this diagram to see what it means. If you're looking at two triangles, when triangles are congruent, we can write a congruency statement. It is very important that there's a few details you pay attention to. So if we notice the marks in the angles, you see here there's a single line at angle A in the first triangle and a single line in angle D in the second triangle. That means that those are corresponding parts. A is congruent to D. If you look at E, there are two marks, and the same thing for B in the other triangle. So E and B have two marks. Those are corresponding parts and they are congruent to each other. And so you can imagine for F and C, you notice that they have three marks. This is how we notate which ones are congruent to each other when we're just making marks. If we weren't able to say angle B and angle E, we could notate them in the diagram by the lines. Same thing by the hash marks on the sides. We have one hash mark on side AB and one hash mark on side ED. Those are corresponding sides. They are equal to each other. And I'm not going to go through as much detail, but you see the ones with two, and then you see F and D, FD and AC have three. So these are all the corresponding parts of these two triangles. And you will notice right here it says triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. You can put the letters in any order, but you need to match them up. Remember we said that A and D have one mark and they are equal. Notice that they are both mentioned first. And then B and E are congruent and they are both mentioned in the middle. And then finally, C and F are congruent and those are both mentioned last. Okay? It is very important that you pay close attention. The order of the letters very specifically matters. You must have the correct order of the letters, okay? So it says right here, a valid congruency statement must match all corresponding angles and sides. You can also notice that AB is congruent to DE. See right here? DE and AB are the ones with a single slash mark. It is very important that the letters go in the correct order because that tells you which angles correspond to each other when you're naming the triangles, and it tells you which sides correspond. So now we have this long statement. Let's fill it in. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And there we have it. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. One thing that I will notate is notice that it says corresponding parts of congruent triangles. That is an important piece right here. The triangles have to be congruent. We have to know that the triangles are congruent in order for this statement to be true. It's not saying that corresponding parts of all triangles are congruent. It's just saying corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So read this if statement right here. If we know two triangles are congruent, then we know that each pair of corresponding parts are also congruent. That's what this tells us, and we give it an abbreviation because if you want to test it out and see why we say CPCTC, try pausing the video and say 3 times out loud, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Or imagine that you have to write that down all the time. Here's the good news. You need to remember what it means, but we can write it with this abbreviation because it's accepted. Okay? So here we go. Let's look at an example. List all congruent angles and sides given the congruency statements. Here is our congruency statement for number 1. And what that means is it's telling us triangle JKL is congruent to triangle PQR. The angles that we need to match up, we already said that the angles go in order. So angle J is congruent to angle P. How do I know? They're both mentioned first. Which one's in the middle? K and Q. Angle K is congruent to angle Q. And the last one, L and R. Angle L is congruent to angle R. I just went in order of the way that they were named. I could mix it up. I could do R and L, and then Q and K, and then J and P. That's fine, but I have to keep the ones that are in the same order. I have to match them up. Same thing with the sides. I've got side JK is congruent to side PQ. Now what I mean by mix it up is I did JK. I could do LK and then put that with RQ, because notice those are the second two letters. LK and RQ are the second two letters. And then the last set, notice that we've got three different letters and we need to match them up to make the pairs. So we did the first and second letter. We did the second and third letter. This time we have to do the first and the last. So my last one is going to be JL and PR. And again, it's okay. I could say RP is congruent to LJ. That part isn't the primary concern. The concern is that you're matching the correct sides together. So we need to write another valid congruency statement. This right here at the top is a congruency statement. Given the fact that I told you that you can put them in other orders as long as you keep them matched up, let's see what other options we could have. So down here at the bottom, I could just write them backwards. LKJ, triangle LKJ is congruent to triangle. Now I have to be careful. I put L first, so R has to be first. K is in the middle, so Q goes in the middle. And then the P goes last, just like the J went last. Okay, it's another option that I could start with K. Okay, let me shrink that down so that we have a little more space to write. And we'll put another one. So let's say that I started with K. I've got triangle K, L, J. I have to match it up. Which one is K is in the middle? So Q is in the middle. Q is going to have to go first now. And then I put L. L was last. It's matched with R. And then I put J, which is matched with P. Okay, you see what's happening? So you can reorganize the letters in each triangle, but you must match up the pairs correctly in order for it to be a valid congruency statement. That's what it means to be valid. It's got to match up correctly. I'm going to leave number 2 for you to try on your own. Jump down to number 3. Given KPM, triangle KPM is congruent to triangle AYC, complete each of the following statements. Here's what we got. KPM and AYC, let's mark them. The K is first and the A is first, so those are congruent. The P is in the middle, I'll put 2 marks, and the Y is in the middle, that's 2 marks. And then the last is M and C, so I'm going to put 3 marks. Now, could you have figured this out by looking at the triangles? It's quite possible because these triangles are pretty unique, but it's important that you can do it by the letters. You cannot go by the diagram. If it doesn't have the markings like these lines that we just did for the angles or the sides, you can't assume. You've got to have information. Now let's mark the sides. KP is congruent to AY because that's the first 2 letters in each. PM is congruent to YC. And then finally, KM is congruent to CA. Okay, so here's our parts. And now you can come over here and I'll fill in a few of these and I'll let you do some. So line KM, we put 3 marks on it and we said that CA is congruent. Okay, that's easy enough. And you could put AC or CA. Well, you can match the letters. K came first and K is congruent with A. So that's one way to do it, okay? It doesn't necessarily matter when you're only talking about one side. What's going to matter is when you are talking about matching them up. And so I think that it will be fine if we say K is equal to A. So here I'm going to put AC instead of CA. It's better to match them up every time and not worry about, oh, was I supposed to match them up or not? Match them up all the time, okay? So for example, when we say angle Y is congruent to what? Well, we put 2 marks on angle Y, and that was angle P. Remember, we can confirm that because they're both listed in the middle on the congruency statement, okay? And then, let's see, triangle YAC. Okay, that starts with Y, which means my next one has to start with P. And then it goes to A, which is matched to K. And then it goes to C, which is matched to M. So it should say triangle PKM. Now I'm going to let you fill in the rest of these on your own. Give that a try by matching up the correct parts. And then we can jump to the next page and look at how are we going to use this information. So we've got here number 4, given triangle STW is congruent to triangle BFN, find each missing measure. Okay? So remember, all of the rules that we've already learned about triangles are still true, like the whole 180 degrees and all that sort of thing. That's still true. But also we now have information about corresponding parts. This given statement tells us that they're congruent, and that means that their parts are congruent because corresponding parts of corresponding triangles are congruent. So we can look at the statement S is matched with B, and they told us that S is 67 degrees. That means that B is also 67. So over here on letter E, I can write that the measurement of angle B is 67 degrees. Notice this is not an arithmetic situation so much as being able to identify the correct parts. And then looking at the name, T is in the middle, so I'll put 2 marks, and in the second one, F is in the middle. There's 2 marks. We don't have either one of those, so we're going to have to come back to that when we have more information. Right now, we don't know that measurement. And then we have the last one, W and N. Here's W, and N is 82. So what does that tell me? If N is 82, so is W. So over here I can write measurement of angle W is 82 degrees. Now we could find T and B, right? I'm sorry, T and F. We could find T and F because 82 and 67 are 2 of the triangles, and then we need to find the third. So I can add 7 plus 2. If I add these 2 right here, 7 plus 2 is 9. 8 and 6 is 14. So that's 149. What's it going to be when I subtract from 180? That's 31. So angle F is 31 degrees, and so is T, right? Because they're the same. And then we can look at our sides. BN is matched with what? Let's go ahead. I'm going to erase some of my marks. If you've made marks, don't worry about erasing if you don't want to. BN is right here, and it is the first and last letter. So in the other triangle, it's SW. SW. Look at that. SW is 9 centimeters. So what is BN? 9 centimeters. All right. The next one that they ask us for is TW. TW is the second and third letter. It's right here. TW is the second and third. Look at this FN. FN over here is 14 centimeters. TW is equal to that, so it's 14 centimeters. And then the last one, BF. Notice that's the first 2 letters. BF right here is the first 2 letters. That means it's matching with ST, which is 17 centimeters. So you see how that happened? We're just matching up the parts of the triangle. You're going to go ahead to number 5 and try that on your own, okay? Now we're going to jump down to number 6 and look what happens. Again, we're given a given statement, 2 things that are true, 2 triangles that are congruent. Find the values of X, Y, and Z. So what's going to happen here? We're going to have to match up the parts to make sure which thing we can find. X, Y, and Z. First thing I want to notice is X, Y, and Z are all sides. Everything that we're working together with here is sides. So we just need to match them up. Let's look first at X. X is right here on UV, and UV is the first 2 letters when we named that triangle, so we need to look at TS. TS is right here. I just marked it with the same color. So what I'm going to do is say 12x minus 7 has to equal 53. And then we can solve that, right? So 12x, I'm going to add the 7, 12x, x equals 5. That part's done. That was not too difficult, hopefully. Now we can come back with a different color since I'm using a tablet here. And we'll just look at y. Y is right here on RS. Looking at the name, RS is the last two letters, and we need to match it with VW. So it's right here. So again, we can just take the 5y minus 33, and it's equal to 57 in the other triangle. So we can solve that. We need to add 33 to both sides, and 57 plus 33 is 90. And then we need to divide by 5. If you remember that 100 divided by 5 is 20, then 90 is like, we would go 90, 95, 100, and so it's 18 because it's like we're missing two 5s. So there's my y value. And then the last one is z, which is right here on UW. UW was the first and last letter. So I'm going to take TR. And notice that I did not, just to be clear, I didn't make the 3 different hash marks and 2 different hash marks and such because I have the colors to identify it. So in this case, I was able to use color coding instead of the correct number of hash marks. If you're using a pencil, then like for these 3, if you're doing Z last, you should have 3 marks, okay? So just keep that in mind. The reason I'm not making multiple marks is because I have different colors. You can already tell what's matched. So let me scoot this over. I keep missing one. Here we go. Scoot this over to give us more room. And we've got 3z plus 14 equals 50. So now I need to subtract 14 from both sides, and that's going to be 36. And z equals 12. So here are my 3 answers, and I'm sorry, I didn't write that very neatly. Let me rewrite z equals 12 where we can read it. And then we'll jump down. 7 you're going to do on your own. It's the same process, but with angles. You should still be able to do the work. Just keep in mind that you might need to use that the angles add up to 180. I don't know for sure, but give that a try. And then we'll jump down to number 8 to do together. We've got triangle DEF is congruent to triangle JKL, and then they gave us different sides, 18, 23, 9x minus 23. Oh, they gave us all the sides. Find the values of x and y. So here's the deal. You can draw the picture if you want to, but you don't have to, because look what we have. For x, we've got DF. DF is the first and last letter. And we know from the names that DF is congruent to JL because that's the first and last letter. Do we have a measurement right here? So DF, 9x minus 23 equals JL, 7x minus 11. Notice I didn't need to draw the picture because I could identify. Now let me actually not miss any numbers and scoot this over here, and I'm just going to put a colon to show, okay, here's what we've got. Okay, so now I can just solve for x. So I'm going to bring the 7x over here, and I'm going to add the 23 on the right. 9x minus 7x is 2x. Negative 11 plus 23 is 12. So what do I find out? X equals 6. That one's done. And then the other thing we needed is y. Y, we've got JK over here. And looking back at our picture, our information, JK is the first 2 letters. So JK is congruent to DE in the other triangle. What does that tell us? DE is right here. It equals 18. This one's going to be pretty straightforward. We've got 3y minus 21 equals 18. So what do I need to do? Add 21 to both sides. 21 and 18 is going to be 39. Divide by 3, and I get 13. So there's my answers for x and y. You can apply that to do number 9 on your own, and then you are finished. Great job.